A dreary day.
This day sucks.
Oh, God, let's go.
You're either on the bus or you're off the bus.
Welcome aboard, episode 41 of Ridin the Bus, the official Iowa Wild podcast presented by Central Iowa Pool and Spa. On the way, the wheels are rolling. Joey Goldstein, Ben Gislason, Abby Kimball behind the camera. And we're back in the Iowa Wild dressing room. And we've got the stripes behind us because we have a really great interview coming your way today. Off the beaten path, Chad Evers, longtime linesman in the American Hockey League, and easily the most informative interview we've had. We dug in, and we got a lot out of Chad, and at the end, we even learned that Chad was a little nervous coming in, as I think most officials might be, walking into a situation where they're going to have a camera and a microphone on them, because we know Chad. We like Chad. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't turn the screws on him and try to grill him a little bit. He had a good time, and we had a great time. So great to be back in studio here, but also great to have Chad with us, too.
Yeah, people are going to learn a lot, which I think is nice because, like I kind of alluded to it, there's a lot of things that I think people just don't realize about the officiating world. Like, as a fan, you watch it with such, like, a bird's eye view that you miss a lot of things. You don't see the little nuances or how much these guys are being evaluated, and especially for someone like Chad. Chad's a linesman, right? There is a distinct difference between linesmen and referees, which a lot of people, they think the guys wearing stripes, they're all the same. Well, that's not the case. Chad's not the one making penalty calls and this and that. Like, that's not his role. He's got to have an eye on everything, but sometimes when people get upset with a call or upset with an official, they're directing their frustrations in the wrong direction, right? But he's got some great stories, and I think people are going to learn a lot from him, and I think it's going to be, hopefully, something that fans can take with them coming into the coming season. And just before you get on an official or want to jump down somebody's throat, just take that extra second and just remember the conversation with Chad.
Make sure you don't step away during the Tim Army story. That one was one of the better stories we've gotten on the podcast.
Yeah.
And I knew it would be because Tim is such an animated person, and he had so many conversations with refs. So he was someone that right away when I knew we were having Chad, and I said, we got to ask about Tim.
Yeah.
And that story was a fabulous one. So make sure you enjoy that and listen closely to it. It's a great story. Before we get to that, what do we need to touch on ahead of launching into a really informative interview?
Yeah, I mean, we're in that kind of quiet time right now.
It's nice.
You know, there's not a lot happening around the AHL. I mean, when I think this AHL wraparound piece, actually I do have something Hockey Ops news, but I'll get to that in a sec. AHL wraparound though, really nice article came out on the AHL website that Patrick Williams wrote about Stephen Fogarty and his, I guess the best way to put it is his just like feelings in coming to terms with retiring and hanging him up, and kind of how he feels about it all. And if you haven't read it, I definitely go check it out. We've waxed poetic about Fogs plenty here, but it was cool to just hear how he's just so at peace with it, and he's excited about this next chapter and what comes next. He talked about with the kids on the way and being married now, and he's talking about how he's got this his degrees in marketing and what comes next and looking for jobs and different things, but his leadership and the teamwork aspect are things that are going to stand out for him and help him in whatever comes next.
It's really obvious when you read the article, the impact that Stephen Fogarty had here. He had it everywhere else he was. Providence, Hartford, Buffalo, wherever he was, there are people like you and me who maybe don't talk about him as much as we do right now because he's so recent.
Yep.
But that, if you ask X person from the Hartford Wolfpack about Stephen Fogarty, they're going to light up because that's the kind of impression he leaves on everybody he comes into contact with, and a very nice button, I think, on the career for Fogs. That article by Patrick Williams, a tip of the cap for sure.
And he talks about it in the article, but it's the way every athlete, when your career comes to an end, it's the way every athlete wants to do that. It's going out on your own terms and being at peace with it. You're not forced out by injury. You're not forced to retire because there's no more, like, you're not getting contract offers and whatnot. But Fogues, I'm sure, had contract offers.
I can tell you for a
almost-
fact he did.
I would
I can
guarantee
tell you
that
for
he
a
had
fact
them.
he did.
I mean,
Yep.
even
Yep,
I mean,
he
he had a great year last year.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? So, but he just, that time comes for everybody. I think for a guy like that, as they get older, when the goal is to play in the NHL, when the NHL is probably no longer, that option. It's looking at taking a good hard look in the mirror and saying, do I want to do that? It's traveling bus league, right? That's hard. It's not easy, especially when you get two young kids coming into the world. Like it changes everything. So it's the best case scenario that you can hope for somebody when their career comes to an end.
Thrilled to see whatever is next for Stephen and Allie Fogarty. Not only their impending parenting that they'll have coming, but what's next for Fogues professionally. Can't wait to see whatever it will be. I'm sure he will excel at. AHL wraparound. You said you had hockey ops news. Do I not know about this hockey ops news?
I mean, you
I
should know about it.
should.
It's kind of it honestly it kind of flew under the radar a little bit, but it's just
The prospect showcase. I did know about that,
yeah.
but yes.
Yeah.
But not
Again, it's not
publicly.
something
It
that's
just
been
came out.
It's been big. It just
Yes.
came out, but in terms of dates and everything, so the Tom Curvers prospect showcase once again taking place in Missouri, so St. Louis.
Yeah, that's the new twist to it.
Yeah.
Is it used to just be for the last 3 years,
This is us in
4
Chicago,
years.
right?
Now I'm starting to really feel old because I'm not quite sure how many years it's been. But it was the transition out of the old Traverse City
This is
mega
this is the
prospect
fourth
tournament.
annual
Fourth
Tom
annual.
Curvers.
So it's been so 3 years. Previous 3 years it's been just Chicago and Minnesota alternating. Twice in St. Paul, once we were out in Chicago.
Yep.
Now St. Louis coming into the mix. So I'm excited to get. I've never been to St. Louis. I've driven through it. Never been to it. I have a good friend, a college roommate, actually lives in St. Louis. So excited to get to see it and to get to bring a new organization into the fold. I guess I shouldn't say that. Last year, St. Louis was involved. Now that I think about it, they were involved. It went from 2 teams to 3. But now St. Louis hosting it. That'll be the first time they've hosted it.
And it's round robin style, so it's taking place at their community ice center. I assume that's a big practice facility for the Blues. Round robin style games are going to take place Friday the 13th through Sunday the 15th. Every team's going to play each other once. There's going to, obviously you'll be able to go, if you're a Blues fan, go and watch them practice and whatnot. But the roster came out. That was really the big thing that I kind of want to just touch on quickly because it's a lot of guys who we're going to be familiar with, a lot of guys that we're going to end up seeing. So some of those names who people would be familiar with, Luke Toporowski going, Gavin Hain will be there, Mikey Milne will be there, Caden Bankier will be there, Pavel Novak will be there, Jack Peart, Carson Lambos, Kyle Masters, David Spacek are all guys who were here at some point last year. We expect to see a lot of this year as well. We'll be at this showcase, but there's also some names on here of newcomers who we've definitely talked about before with Hunter Haight, Matthew Sopp, Riley Haight, who we probably won't see this year. Haight and Haight. We probably won't see him because if he doesn't make the NHL team, he's got to go back to junior. But somebody who is very highly sought after in this organization. So another big name. If you're watching,
huge year in the WHL.
Yeah, if you're watching, keep an eye on him for sure. Brad Merrick, somebody who we signed this offseason from San Jose/Wichita. Kyle McClellan, Samuel Halavai are 2 guys, goaltenders who we signed. McClellan came in a little bit late last year after the Wisconsin season ended.
Wasn't really
but
here
he wasn't
to play,
like
though.
here to play.
He came here to check it out, meet people.
Correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And then Halavai was obviously up there for Dev Camp, played World Juniors, World Championships. So a guy who I would think we'll probably see a little bit of at some point this year. Just knowing that at some point Jesper is going to go up and play some games in Minnesota. Between the two of them, one of them will be someone that we see probably here for a little bit. So that's going to take place mid-September, and then as soon as that's done, that rolls right into the NHL camp, and
we're off and running.
Then we're off and running.
We're off and skating, as I like to say. The one thing that I hadn't looked at the roster yet. Good homework on my end. I'll get to know it at some point. But the one name that comes up there that I just love seeing for the story behind it is Gavin Hain. This is a guy who's from Minnesota, grew up loving and watching the Minnesota Wild. He signs a 2-way deal last year, ECHL 2-way deal. Fully expected. Actually, he didn't sign that. Now that I think about it, he was on PTOs for a while with Iowa. the Wild, not the Heartlanders. He was both slotted to be with the Heartlanders.
Yep.
This is a guy who was getting ready to play an ECHL career, barely played any games down there, wound up playing a huge role in the depth lines for Iowa. And now when he goes to this camp, that's the Minnesota Wild. I remember when I get through the broadcast, it was a cool moment for me when I first said, and here come the Minnesota Wild. I'm just like, wow,
Yeah.
I'm getting to say that. Granted, it's a prospect game, but for him to get to wear the crest, it's a Minnesota Wild game. It's a pretty neat moment for a native Minnesotan like that.
He's a guy, it reminds me a lot of like, he's basically a Kevin Conley type person who's, when they first signed, like when he was coming up and down and just signing those PTOs, like, I don't think the thought wasn't get him in here, get him a contract, but he played so well, he earned it. That's what Cons did last year. Cons played so well that he earned the spot that he had last year.
Also earned a contract. We'll see him again.
We'll see him again.
The Manitoba.
In Manitoba, yep. So he's definitely earned that. And, the other good thing to every time always gets me. The other good piece to the prospect camp too. It's there's guys who aren't under contract, invitees. They could be guys who graduated college or whatever. These are guys who maybe they sign with the Heartlanders. Maybe there's someone who signs an AHL deal with us as a depth person. So just because it's not a name that you've seen over and over again doesn't mean you can rule out seeing them in an Iowa Wild sweater at some point down the line.
Definitely. Someone we didn't see in an Iowa Wild sweater ever, did see in a Des Moines Buccaneer sweater once upon a time, but the sweater behind us, if you're with us on YouTube, the American League officials uniform, we saw him frequently. Local, from Minnesota originally, much like me, a transplant to Des Moines, but has fallen in love with it. Chad Evers, wonderful chat with him. I think let's get to period 2.
Do it. Before we get to our second period interview with our very special guest here, we've got to shout out our brand new sponsor in Central Iowa Pool and Spa. Is your pool or spa looking a little cloudy or green? Don't panic. Central Iowa Pool and Spa's BioLab can help. Our state-of-the-art water testing will pinpoint the exact problem, whether it's chemical imbalance, algae, or equipment malfunction. We'll provide clear recommendations to restore your pool or spa to crystal clear condition. Trust our experts and keep your water sparkling all season long. Call us at 515-263-6900 or stop in at Central Iowa Pool and Spa on Northeast 14th Street in Des Moines.
The bus keeps rolling here on Ridin the Bus, and we're an Iowa Wild-centric podcast. But, Joey, one thing that we love to do is step outside of the organization a little bit. We never just completely go outside of the organization and make someone with zero connection come on. But this is one that we had identified in the season for an off-season guest in longtime American League linesman, also linesman throughout hockey in the Midwest, has been a huge part of the Wells Fargo Arena experience here over the last few years. Recently hung up the stripes, and so now that we have Chad Evers with us, we've got a retired linesman, so we know that he's going to take the curtain, pull it away, and give us all of the gritty details we want to know about being an official. But Chad, thanks so much for coming in and doing this with us today.
Thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, let's start with this. Just because you're a linesman doesn't mean you didn't travel a ton. And it may not be a bus story like we typically do with players, but I actually want to hear about traveling and what that's like as an official. But let's start with this. A great travel story. Maybe you got shanghaied somewhere. What comes to mind when I say a great travel story in the catalog of Chad Evers' career?
Well, as far as close calls comes on getting to games, I was taking classes at Grandview College here in Des Moines and finished up at 10:30 in the morning. Had to get in the car and drive up to Green Bay and blew a tire about an hour and a half outside of Green Bay and happened to be lucky to find someone that could fix it at that time and got me to the game just as the national anthem started.
So was the anthem already playing when you stepped onto the ice? Or
Just
did you
prior.
just got there?
Just prior.
Have you had that can't be the only close call you've had. What is travel like, whether it's in the USHL, I know in the American League specifically these last few seasons, you were local as a linesman here in Des Moines. That's what a lot of the American League does. But nonetheless, you've done a lot of different leagues in your time. What is travel typically like when you are an official?
It's a grind at times. I mean, you put a lot of miles on the car, a lot of windshield time, a lot of thinking, going over scenarios, stuff like that. But it gives you a chance to reflect and Yeah, there are some instances where you have to plan ahead because of weather or traffic. I was slowed to a game in Waterloo because of a combine, and
Yep.
that was kind of humbling.
So you, like me, a native son of Minnesota, St. Louis Park, where
Mhm.
you grew up. The Des Moines Buccaneers, also much like me, brought you here to Iowa. You came to play. I came to talk about playing, but you've been here ever since. Walk us through how Chad Evers got to Iowa and why you've been here so long now.
Oh boy, graduated from high school, wasn't really sure what I was gonna do. Received a phone call from the new head coach of the Des Moines Bucks back in 1990, which was Bob Ferguson. Legend coach, great man, unbelievable mind. Um, he had said that he had wanted me to come down for tryouts, and everything seemed to work out, and ended up in Des Moines and loved it. Played for a few months in Des Moines and unfortunately got traded to Waterloo, which I loved Waterloo, just wasn't Des Moines. From there, I went on to play college hockey, and when it was time to hang up, I got into refereeing. I didn't want to miss the game and loved it too much.
How did you know, when did you know that you were going to trade out numbers on your back for numbers on your sleeve?
I would say probably the last year of playing college hockey. I knew I wanted to get in the game somehow. I had no experience as a coach, and somebody said, "Hey, try officiating. It's a good time to stay on the ice. You get the camaraderie, you get all that stuff that goes along. The compete level is just a different compete, and that's what drove me to it."
All these years removed now, when you first started, did you ever think that you'd wind up being on this path where most of your life you've been wearing the stripes?
No. No. Everyone, when I first jumped in, said, "Welcome to the dark side." And it can be a dark side, but for the most part, you meet some unbelievable people. You meet some great coaches, some great players, some talented people, and it's just an overall unbelievable experience.
Let's stay in that phase of your life, having to go from as a player, where for the most part, not always, you have a very love-hate relationship with referees and officials. Now, like to use your words, you're on the dark side.
Mm-hmm.
Was there a point where you had to work on getting past that? Because when you work around referees enough, I've had the privilege to be around referees enough. Obviously, there are times we all don't agree on the call, but what you learn is, one, the game is extremely fast, and when you're down rinkside, it's even faster. But two, you learn that it's a group of men and women that are just trying to do the best they can. Mistakes happen, but there had to have been a little bit of a time for you where you had to work past that. How did you help get into that and realize that, oh yeah, this isn't a bunch of bad people. These are just people that are working in also a very functional part of the game of hockey?
It took a few years to figure that out. You took it personally in the beginning. When coaches would get upset, it'd be like, "Wait a minute, I didn't do anything. You're upset and it took a while to figure that out. And then you see the nuances, and sometimes you see a coach will get on somebody just to maybe spark their team or bring up something else, somehow to get their team going. I try not to take things personally unless they make it personal. And thankfully, there wasn't too many times where that happened.
The American Hockey League, the United States Hockey League, others, though, for our fans that maybe don't know you from games, because when a referee and an official is doing their job properly, you guys are invisible, right? I mean, that's
Should be.
oftentimes the goal. But for anybody that does know you and didn't know where some of the other leagues you've been in, walk us through the different leagues and experiences you've had. And were you always a linesman, or has there been some time refereeing as well?
There's been a few times refereeing. I refereed a little bit in the USHL. Usually, I think it was when they were shorthanded. To be honest, they needed a body with stripes and knew the game. And so I think, I probably ref maybe 10, 15 USHL games. It was a different atmosphere and just wasn't comfortable doing it. So I stayed a linesman and enjoyed doing that.
So USHL. Have you done any college hockey games at all?
Yes.
Yep.
So I started out doing youth hockey for 2 years. Then I was asked to go to a district officiating seminar up in Minneapolis.
Can only imagine parents in youth hockey. They
gotta
probably
be
got to be worse
brutal.
than coaches at sometimes, right?
Yeah, can be. I went to a district officiating seminar up in Plymouth, Minnesota, and Matt Leaf led this seminar, and he was the man in USA Hockey for officials. So he saw me there and passed my name on to some other people, and was doing USHL games for a few years, and did USHL North American League, America West, way back when.
I'm not even sure I've heard of America West before.
Billings, Helena, Bozeman, they
I
were
got
all
to
in
see
the
some
Mer-
pretty places
yeah.
at least.
Then after that, I did Division I college for the CCHA, then the WCHA, then the NCHC. I was based out of Des Moines, so we did Omaha. So whatever league Omaha was in, that's what we fell into.
Yeah, locationally a great spot
Yeah.
to be, especially for those conferences, no doubt. Joey and I were discussing this before we get into it, and we want to hear some stories, but it's also not often you get to sit down with an official, someone that's officiated such a high level of hockey like you have, and we're naturally going to have rules questions, things that we want to get your opinion on, because this is an opportunity. I've really never had it. I've had it with people that referee youth hockey, but this is a different animal here.
Yeah.
What you've seen, the big moments you've had to try to make a call on an offside or an icing call or to break up a fight. That's another thing I want to get into. But Joey, started off, what are some of the things that you are interested in that you think this is a rare opportunity for you and I to sit here with Chad and get some very knowledgeable fact about the fraternity of officiating?
Yeah. So the one thing that I always go back to, and I feel like it happens all the time at our level, it happens in the NHL level, guys get thrown out of faceoffs constantly, right? And
Stephen Fogarty.
yeah,
all the time.
It's there are times, and you might be guilty. There might be times where it happens a couple times before the puck gets dropped, where guys are the whistle's blowing, you push everybody back, separate them. I know there's sometimes guys are cheating a little bit, but what are the reasons for holding it up, throwing a guy out of the face-off circle? Like, what are you guys looking for in that situation?
One of the things we're taught is we don't want to throw guys out of face-offs. We want the two best players in there doing the face-off. During that face-off, it has to be a fair face-off, not perfect. So if the center here cheats a little bit, but that winger's in a little bit, you compensate. As long as it's not this guy's way in and this guy's bare, you know what I mean? So you're never going to get a perfect face-off. So you decide that way. And then as long as you're standing there and they come down and they're set, as long as they don't move before you move, it's all good. As soon as your hand moves, they can move.
Okay.
But if they jump the gun or they whack the guy ahead of time or
That happens a lot.
they don't
That happens a lot.
or they tend to not listen to directions. We're talking to them the entire face-off. All right, guys, here we go. First stick down, second stick down, I'll get the puck down.
And the defensive zone team has put their stick down first, correct?
Correct.
How does that work when you guys are like neutral zone?
It's still whichever attacking
Closer.
or defending side of
Sure.
the face-off.
Gotcha.
Now, if an offensive player comes in and wants his stick down first and puts it down, he's got that right.
Sure.
The defensive team can't say he's got to pick his stick up. That's just how it is.
Okay. Good to know. Good to know. You alluded to fights, and that was actually one of the questions we got when we put it out on social. But when do you guys know the right time to step in and break up a fight?
Again, we're constantly talking to the players. We're talking to each other. We're always across from each other, and the players making sure sticks, gloves, stuff's out of the way. Talking to them. You guys good? You guys good? Yep. Let us go. Let us go. You let us know when you're done. You let us know. Or one guy gains a huge advantage. You jump in.
Sure.
One guy hits the ground. You jump in. They get up against the boards or up against the bench just so you don't have other people interacting.
That's
jump in then.
It's one of the unique things. It's like there is a lot of communication between the officials and between you guys and the players when you guys are on the ice, that because of the glass and there's music and the crowd screaming, people don't hear that or really see that unless you get someone who's mic'd up sometimes. Like, you don't pick up on those things. So I think there's a lot of things that people don't realize. What would you say and you don't have to name names, but what are some of like the funniest things that you've heard when you've been out on the ice in terms of like maybe there's a fight or a funny chirp? Because there's tons of it, and we've had players tell us some of the funny things that they've heard, that they've said. But I'm curious to see if there's anything that resonates in your mind that stands out as like.
There's been so many good ones. If I would have been smart when I started this journey, I would have kept a notebook in my referee bag to write them down, because I've forgotten far more than I can remember. One of them was doing a USHL game, and a poor kid got traded like 3 times in 2 weeks.
God.
And he showed up to the game and didn't have his name on the back of his jersey. And the kid lined up across from him, asked him if he even unpacked his suitcase yet. I mean, just completely out of the blue, and you got to try to keep a straight face.
You can't smile,
Yeah.
but you want to.
You gotta be a
You're
neutral
just like,
party.
oh my gosh,
Sure.
that's incredible.
Yeah.
That's one of the things, and I even remember this a little bit as a player, mainly in the North American League, where it's 60 some games, and you get a lot of the same officials. You do develop relationships with players. A guy that I think about is Joe Hicketts, who comes
Greatest guy on ice. Greatest guy on ice. Hands down.
Well, he comes from a family of officials, and that was one thing I learned about him, because I noticed this when he was here. He was always talking to you guys. And some guys you can tell are not being friendly when they're talking to you. Other guys you can tell he's just hamming it up, and that's who Joe Hicketts is.
Yep.
But when you think about some of the relationships that you've had, some of the guys who were just, and you just mentioned Joe, were great to be around or fun to have on the ice. What are some of the relationships that jump out to you that you've had with players over your time?
Oh, I can remember back in the USHL days, dropping the puck for Pavelski.
Oh, yeah.
And he would come through
Timely.
with his top hand, and he'd catch you in the side of the face. So I would ask him nicely, next time don't spin and catch me in the face. Just little things like that. You get into duels with people thinking things are offsides when they're not, and there's give and take with that as well with the players.
Who are some of the Iowa Wild players that jump out when I say great relationships, great to have on the ice, lots of talk? Obviously, Hicketts is in that discussion.
Yes, Hicketts is in there. Murmis was a good guy. I love Dakota Murmis. He was a good guy.
So do we.
Oh man, Grayovac didn't say much, but when he did, it was pretty funny. Some of the older players. If I thought back to the first few years, I'd have to get back to you on that one. I'm drawing a mind blank on names. Too many concussions over the years.
Let's flip the coin on that. And when I say least favorite players to deal with, that doesn't mean you just despise this guy, but there are plenty of players. I think of a guy like Turner Ottenbright, who was a wonderful guy, but he ran his mouth all the time, and we'd give him grief for that. Is there anybody like that who you just had to say, hey, blank, just relax, chill out, calm down? Who are some of those maybe Iowa Wild players that jump out to you in that category?
Otter was intense.
That's a good word for it.
I'm
Yeah.
going to hear
Very
about
intense.
this too, by the way. I do think
That's
he
fine.
listens. I do think he listens.
Great guy,
Everyone's,
though.
Oh, he's
but
one
he
of
was
my
intense.
favorites. Oh,
Very
but really.
intense. Rao was tough at times.
He had a lot to say too.
Always.
Yes. he had
Always something on his mind.
that
Something
happened off the ice too, Chad.
Something we weren't doing right. Yeah. Something we needed to tweak. Yeah.
Speaking of other wild people that you probably had a lot of conversations with, I've never seen a head coach talk to the officials like Tim Army, and I feel confident enough in my relationship with Tim that I could bring this up. Tim and I got along well, excited to see him with Anaheim now, but he was someone that, much like Kyle Rao, always had an opinion on the way that things were going in the game. Do you have any great stories? And I know you do because you came for the first time in Ridin the Bus history with homework and some knowledge, some background on this question. What jumps out to you in the, I'd imagine, wars that you guys had to have with Tim Army? Because I even got to witness them from a long ways away sometimes when you guys would get going at each other.
They were sometimes intense,
Sometimes.
meaningful, and good. One of the stories I liked the best was I was asked 2 or 3 days before a game to come in and sub for someone who either got sick or injured. I don't remember. And I came out onto the ice and took our lap, and I was standing between the benches, and I knew Tim was a very statistical guy. He had his everything down to a T. And when I got into the locker room, I noticed my name wasn't on the score sheet. So I thought, oh, this is going to cause a problem. He'll say something. I guarantee he'll say something. So I go out there, and I'm standing, and I'm watching him skate around, and I see Tim walk out, and I wave to him, and he looks down at his sheet and looks over at me and looks down at his sheet again and hits the assistant coach and looks back and goes, Chad. I acted like I didn't hear him, and I kind of look at him, yeah? I skate over, and he goes, you're not supposed to be on this game. And I said, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, you're not on this game. I said, I was asked to come and do it. I said, I'm sorry to disappoint you. He's like, no, that's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. And I kind of skated away, kind of played it off a little bit. So I hope he figured it out. I'm sure he did. But that was one of them.
It's so funny. He always used to, and I got to do this for him, and then I graduated on from it. But one of the things our PR guy has to make sure to get to him in the morning, the names of the officials. He wants to know right away. And so I've been on that side of it and then graduated onto this current position, didn't have to do it anymore. But that doesn't surprise me at all that when all of a sudden the numbers didn't add up, his wires crossed and he was, what's going on? What's going on?
I'll bet if he knew, things might have been a little different.
Yeah, he wouldn't have said anything.
Well, not only that, but maybe his lineup would have been different. I'm sure he looks at who the linesmen are and who their centers are and whoever. I mean, he's a very detailed man. Incredibly detailed. Never had a problem with him. He had good complaints when he had complaints, and I enjoyed working games when he was there.
Well, and admittedly, Chad, I've heard his coaching staff, other coaching staffs complain about officials, and I'm not just saying this because you're here. Yours is the one of the names that never came up, so kudos to you. Maybe it happened when I wasn't in the room.
Just tried to do my job.
Yeah, yours was not a name that came up, really. In fact, I'd not heard it, players included, so you kept your head in the foxhole apparently pretty well with some of these guys. Brett McLean, different than Tim Army. All coaches are different. What are the contrasts, the comparisons? What maybe do all coaches bring from a relationship with a referee, from a linesman? And maybe how did Brett McLean maybe differ from previous Wild coaches that you dealt with?
Well, with Army, you would stand at the blue line and you'd constantly hear him. Support, pass. Constantly.
Yeah, he's really vocal.
With Brett, you don't hear that. So that's one of the vocalizations out loud to the players. You don't hear that with Brett. Both of them have an immense passion for it. They want to see their team succeed. And, yeah, he was a breath of fresh air. It was a little bit like night and day difference between, and it's just different coaching styles. As an official, you deal with each one the way it presents itself.
Is there a situation that you can think back on where you went, I've never been more in the crosshairs of a coach, and you don't have to name names, and it may or may not be Tim Army, but anything that pops up where you think, man, I had the bead on my forehead during this specific situation, and how did you handle it?
One of my first games we did was against Grand Rapids. And there was a play behind the net where I want to say one of the Iowa Wild players got high-sticked by one of the defensemen on Grand Rapids, unnoticed back in the three-man system. The referee was blocked by 200-pound players you can't see through, the net, everything coming into the zone. And
things us common people don't think about.
Yeah.
Yep. Right?
So a stick came up and hit player right in the face. I saw it hit him. Can't call a 2-minute minor. Didn't know if he was bleeding. As the play comes down, he's got his hand up to his face. As he skates by me, I still can't see anything. He gets to the bench. Grand Rapids scores.
Oh boy.
Okay. So I turn and look, and the kid's got blood all down his face. So my other linesman meets with the official and says, that can't be a goal. We got a high stick back there. He's got blood. I just noticed he's got blood, and same story cross. So long story short, Grand Rapids thinks they have a goal. The end result is Grand Rapids has a 4-minute penalty. Face off in the attacking zone. 5 seconds after the face off, Iowa pumps one in the back of their net. The rest of that game was the hardest game I've ever worked.
I can't even imagine.
I've heard things out of people's mouths that I wouldn't want to ever repeat again. And some in different languages, so you have no idea what they said.
You have no idea what you said, but you know what they said.
Yeah.
Based off the inference and the tone, you're like,
Yeah.
that wasn't like, hey, great job, Chad. You're doing a great job.
You could tell they were not happy.
Oh, wow.
And the right outcome came about because of it.
And that's got to be the hard part of being a ref is you have to make the call, and you know that every time you make a call, someone is going to be incensed by it, whether it's right or wrong. You know that you're willingly stepping into the fire that way, right?
In a sense, yes. But the love for the game is so much that you keep doing it. You live for the close calls. You live for looking at players make awesome plays and just a well-balanced team playing a well-balanced team. Just great competition. That to me was what got me coming back every day. Just seeing two teams compete.
Like every, whether it's an NHL official or MLB umpire, NBA referee, NFL ref, like whoever it may be, you guys are always being watched, being evaluated. What is that process like for you guys? Like after games, how soon do you hear feedback? How often do you hear feedback? What is that like here in the AHL?
In the AHL, every game is supervised, whether they're in person or doing it from a war room, so to speak. They're watching every single game. Every single night there's a game. There's multiple supervisors, and if there's issues, they send memos, all kinds of stuff. If there's somebody in-house, within about 10 or 15 minutes after the game, after you get the score sheet signed and everything, they come down and they talk to you and they go over stuff, so stuff's fresh in your mind. They give good quality feedback. They challenge us, make us accountable. It's a lot more intense than what the average fan would believe.
And that's good. That's what I think. That's like I don't think people realize that everybody. It's easy for a fan to, get on the refs for one reason or another. But what I think sometimes they don't always realize is that everybody's being held accountable one way or another.
It's not just you get off scot-free.
It's not like I missed that high stick call and that's the end of it. Like no, that'll come back. Or it comes back around in evaluations and things like that. So that's
at the end of the year, that's how people go to postseason. How your evaluations throughout the year went, your attitude, everything, on ice, off ice, everything.
Speaking of the average, the common hockey fan, what would you say is maybe the biggest thing, or at least the first thing that pops into your mind that you could even say, I don't know, or Joey doesn't know, that we don't know about being a referee that would, if maybe fans did know that, they might think twice about climbing down a referee's neck on social media after a call gets made?
I can say for myself and probably 99% of the other people, we do it because we love the game. You absolutely love the game. You want to stay in it. And for some, they might not have made it as a player. But to stay in that atmosphere and at that high level is something that I look to stay at. And unfortunately, I just got too old. It happens to all of us.
Well, and aside from coaching, and arguably you could say you're actually closer to the game than they are because you are quite literally in the middle of the game. I can't imagine, and I enjoy the perch that I have, which is as far from the actual game as you can get in the building, but the sheer speed and what you get to see happen in real time, there has to be some moments where you just think, how special is it that I'm right here watching this elite level of a talent make this play at this time of a game? I can only imagine you've had countless experiences like that.
Yeah, you see it in playoff games where guys are just battling and battling. We had one playoff game way back in the day in the USHL. I think it was 6 overtimes. Longest game in USHL history.
My God.
And we finished at like 1 o'clock in the morning. The concession stands closed. The vending machines were empty. Nobody left. That's what it's all about.
Who were the teams? Where was this?
This was
Not to test you.
Lincoln and Cedar Rapids, and I cannot remember the year.
Was it in Lincoln or Cedar Rapids?
It was in Cedar Rapids. I was
At the
reffing
stable.
with Chris Shamaga and Jeff Cook, and it was the longest game in USHL history.
So did you guys have pizzas delivered at some point?
Everything was closed by the time we started.
Oh my
After the
gosh.
4th overtime, we were like, "Oh, we should have ordered something. We should have gone. We should have sent a fan someplace, you know." And they were bringing in Gator. I mean, they did what they could. We had Snicker bar, and it was a great experience. Never thought it was going to end.
How did it end?
Squeaker.
Of course.
Of course. Always, right? Always. You
Just
get
a
to that
lob
point.
shot from the blue line that had eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another fan question, but a good one. So I think of games that we've had, and you know, especially in the AHL, you're playing a team 2 days in a row, sometimes 3 days in a row. You're playing teams a lot. Do you guys get situations where your crew, you guys come into a game where you know things are going to be really intense and things are going to be heated? Do you guys, I'm sure you guys do it, how do you guys approach that game versus just a normal run-of-the-mill Saturday night?
You just talk before the game and make sure everyone's got their eyes open and their ears open, and you can hear a lot more than you can see at times.
Mhm.
I mean, standing in front of the bench, you can hear what they're saying on the bench. Oh, I'm going to, nail that guy,
Mhm.
cheap shot, you hear all that. For the most part, just stay open and stay talking with them and things like that.
And is stuff like that, like if it's I think like if there's a game between us and Rock, we play them 12 times a year, right? If something happens like the night before, do you guys get like something from the league, or are you guys just watching that on your own where it's like, tomorrow night might be a little bit more
A
testy
little of
than
both.
usual?
You might not get something from the league, but the officials are always talking, hey, how was your game last night in
Sure.
Iowa? And they'll let them know, hey, kind of got it, this happened or this happened or we had nothing. It was a Sunday afternoon game, no check league.
Brotherhood, right?
Yeah,
Scouting.
We had a lot of those in the old North American League on a Sunday afternoon, or not the North American League, but Junior B back in the day, where you'd have a Sunday afternoon, and there was two teams that wanted it to be a Sunday off day.
Yeah. Well, you get to those. I mean, I remember when I was in Worcester, right? You get 3 and 3s, and by the third day, everybody's ready to just not be playing. They want the off day, but also you've gone 2 days in a row playing against the same team. You want to kill each other by the time Sunday rolls around. So that definitely happens, where it just gets
Well, yeah,
frustrations can boil over.
there's things that carry over.
Oh, it definitely.
Definitely, yeah. Just be aware of it.
Makeup calls, real or fake, or just something broadcasters talk about.
Depends who you ask.
Okay, I'm asking
We're
you.
asking you. Yeah.
I have this one on here. Let me find where
He's
it
prepared a
is.
statement. That's
Yeah.
smart. That's really good PR
Makeup
work.
calls.
That's really good PR work.
First of all, let me go back. First of all, I've never heard what a makeup call is. Can you explain it? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I was like, I'll try. I'll try.
It happens.
I've always thought it does.
I wouldn't say at all levels. I've done it at lower levels because I knew I made a mistake. I told the coach I screwed up. Plain and simple. They'll respect you a lot more than fighting it.
Is it one of those though where like something like that happens and it's not so much like you're just looking for anything, but your senses are a little bit more heightened to picking up on the little things that may normally get.
I played for a
pushed
coach.
away?
I played for a coach once that said referees carried marbles in their pockets. One side was home, one side was visitor. At the end of the night, they better match. Whether that's true or not, no, I don't. I have blown a call before, honestly. And do you make a makeup call? No, not on purpose, but maybe a benefit of the doubt where you've got two people racing to an icing and it's so close that it happens.
And some of it probably happens subliminally too. Just
Yeah.
inside of your head, okay, that I didn't get that right, and you're not consciously thinking I'm going to give the away team this call, but maybe internally, well, I gave the home team one there. As much as you try to fight bias in your head, I'm sure that can probably
It's
happen.
human. It's human
Yes.
nature.
Yeah.
And you got to fight that. Usually when that happens, the make-up call, it's because you jumped the gun and started to lift your arm because you thought something was going to happen, or you just reacted too soon, or I would say at younger levels, yeah, it probably happens more often, and at higher levels, no, because we are under a microscope, so to speak. I mean, we're evaluated every game, multiple people. The feedback is there. Whether it's positive or it's things you need to work on. They're honest with you.
And makeup calls would probably go in the negative on the evaluation side
I don't
because
think
it's not the right call.
No,
yeah.
I don't think you'd be around long.
Yeah.
If that's what
If you had a history of
if
doing
that was
that.
if that was your game, yeah.
You're around the game long enough, and especially to be as dialed in and as a part of the game as you are, you've seen some crazy things happen. You bring up the 6 overtime epic. I was just thinking about this year when the Wild had, I think it was 30 seconds to go. This was in Grand Rapids to get to a shootout. There was a 4-on-3 power play. Simon Johansson tries to ice the puck, hits an ice mic in the far zone. Faceoff comes back in the Wild zone. Grand Rapids scores with 2 seconds to go. That doesn't hit the ice mic. They go to a shootout. They get through a 4-on-3 overtime power play. Referees got it right because it was bizarre. It hit something strange. It hit a foreign object. That should, at the time I remember thinking, how is this happening? But then you think about it properly and you go, yeah, that face-off's back in the defensive zone. Anything when I bring up that story that comes to mind, or just a wild thing that happened, and you, as the jurisdiction of the game, or you and your partners had to come up with and make the call based off of just a really crazy set of circumstances?
Oh boy. Yeah, we had a situation once in the Southern Professional Hockey League.
Here we go.
Talk about a jungle.
Yeah, one of my few games down there, we were doing a game, and I want to say it was Fayetteville and Knoxville, but I'm not 100% sure. Bad memory on things that are over 10 years old.
Those are 2 SPHL teams, though,
Yep.
so you're not naming random
well,
wrong
good.
teams.
Well, good. I'm on the right. I'm on the right league. And Fayetteville was shorthanded. It was a 5-on-4, and they had a fast break 2-on-1. Both forwards took off, and the player back was a forward, and he played the 2-on-1 not very well. And the kid ended up coming down and firing it in the upper corner. Back then it was 3-man system. The referee was back at the far blue line because it was a fast break on a power play. I was the front guy, and I went, oh my gosh, it went in. Oh my gosh, it went in. 8:31, 8:31, went in, 8:31. Okay, so I got it in my head now. Goes down. I knew it was Fayetteville, but maybe Knoxville, I don't remember. Anyway, so they end up getting a whistle and off of a good scoring chance on the power play. And referee comes over, and I'm like, 100% that was it. The 2 Fayetteville guys went to him. That was in, that was in, that was in. 100% that was in. So he skated by me, and he goes, okay, here we go. So back in that rink, their goal judge was behind the net, had to walk through the fans to a little door off to the side. He comes walking over, and I'm standing there, and the referee goes to the goal judge. Did you see the play? The goal judge nods yes. And he goes, are you 100% sure you saw the play? He goes, yes. Referee blows his whistle and points. Never asked if it crossed the goal line, never asked anything else other than, did you see the play? And he's nodding yes emphatically. Home team. So this poor guy has got to walk back he got showered with beer, he got showered with popcorn, everything, booed, everything. Goalie breaks his stick over the crossbar, shoves the net, and boomerangs his stick out to the blue line.
Oh boy.
It was quite the sight.
Oh, man, can we find this footage anywhere?
I
God,
hope
that'd
so.
Be
I hope so.
unbelievable to see that.
I hope so.
That would be unbelievable to see
So
that.
it's Knoxville, Fayetteville,
It
right?
was Fayetteville for sure. I would have to go back. I've got all the old scenarios of the games I worked and stuff.
Oh, do you keep all that literature?
I think I've got 90%
That's
of it,
terrific.
but some of it got lost.
sounds about right. I just started doing that, keeping my game sheets, because I've seen this from other broadcasters in the National Hockey League that have done this, and I said, why don't I do that? So I just this year started keeping them all. It'll be fun to look back on sometime, and I'm sure, and see the names and probably the stat lines that I had with all these players. Chad, this has been outstanding. I don't have a whole lot else for you. One thing I did want to get to as Joey continues. You find anything over there?
No, I'm gonna keep digging for a little bit.
Yeah,
keep asking your questions.
He's our social media dig
What
man.
do you know what year?
That I don't. It could have been, well,
I typed in Knoxville versus Fayetteville hockey goalie freak out. I don't know what else to type in.
he was.
That could be tough in that league
He
too,
was
whether you're
not
going to have
happy.
the
Yeah,
footage
video
or
can be
not.
tricky.
Maybe it's even better just to have what I think it looks like in my mind.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to touch on with you is there was a lot of debate in these last playoffs, mainly with the new issuing of the new goalie interference rules last season in the National Hockey League. You're an American League ref, it's different, but still the same a little bit. A lot of debate about basically there not being continuity between some of the calls that were deemed to be goals, some that were deemed to be goalie interference. Did you watch any of that? Did you have any thoughts on that watching as an official? Because much like when I watch a game and my lens is different as a broadcaster, i.e. I listen to every word that the play-by-play person says, your lens is different because you're watching for, I'm sure, not just you're watching to see the great plays of National Hockey League players, but you're seeing the game through an official's eyes. Did you make anything of all of the goalie interference hoopla that came in the playoffs this past year?
It's tough. You can look at a situation 3 or 4 times and have 3 or 4 different observations about it. Those guys have a very hard job. Obviously, they're in meetings all the time discussing what should, what shouldn't be. We have an outline of those things, but as far as the in-depth detail, there's a lot going on, and I don't think they're going to make a decision. I know they're not going to make a decision until they're happy with all the people in the room agreeing. So the process maybe needs to be tweaked like they've always done with rules and everything else, and what can be reviewed, what can't, what constitutes interference, what doesn't. Is he pushed in? Is he in on his own? Does he have enough time to get out? Does the goalie have enough time? I mean, there's so many factors that go into it. My opinion is, at that pace, they did a great job during the playoffs. It's a hard game to officiate. It's fast. I mean, those guys are flying. You're looking in the stands. You're looking up at an angle, so you see the ice differently than you do when you're standing looking through 10 200-pound guys that are anywhere from 5'10" to 6'4". It's a hard job. It's rewarding, can be frustrating, but brings a lot of happiness.
Indeed it does. And hockey's random, too. Like, I think about football, I think about basketball. Not that those aren't all difficult jobs, but I would go so far as to say hockey, as far as what can happen in the blink of an eye, it's random. All of a sudden, the game turns around and everything, your whole vantage point this way, and all of a sudden, you got to be looking over here. It's random.
Everybody says, football's this game of inches, but like I would say hockey's even more of a game like centimeters, where it's more likely to those funny bounces and weird things happen way more often in this sport than they do anywhere else.
Yeah, the unpredictable is it's going to happen.
Yeah, and unparalleled, I think, in sport, the unpredictability of hockey.
And that's what makes it such a great sport.
Yes, it does. Yes,
you
it
have
does.
no idea what's going to happen. Go out and have fun and enjoy it.
Life away from hockey now for you. You probably feel like you got your life back a little bit, at least from October to May and into the playoffs time. But how are you going to fill your hours now?
Watch my boy and my daughter. My boy plays hockey. He's a second-year Bantam, developing nicely. My daughter loves to dance and play piano and is very musical, and love watching her compete, and just spend time at home and shuttling kids around and so glad I don't have to work my butt off to stay in shape. You can take it easy for a little bit.
You're looking pretty good still, so you can maybe use
But it's
a
hard.
few extra hours on the couch. I think you'll be all right.
Oh,
Well, it sounds like you got
it's
some.
hard.
Yeah, it sounds like you got plenty to keep yourself busy with. I know you like to wet a line a lot.
That I do.
Good Minnesotan, just like myself. What are any fishing plans you're excited about? Any fish you've had this summer as you dive into your phone? I feel like you're about to show me a
Yeah.
fish picture.
No, I was fortunate enough to meet a buddy of the new general manager here.
He's also a big fisherman.
Yes.
Yes.
So
Matt Hendricks.
I made Matt a muskie lure. Yeah. Actually, my uncle made it, turned it on a lathe, painted it, put all the stuff together, and it is
Holy
Iowa
moly.
Wild. It's got the Iowa Wild logo as the eyes.
We're gonna need
Yeah,
you to
we'll put-
send
we'll
these
put this up.
to me so we can give these to
Yeah.
Abby to post these because these
Yeah.
are fantastic.
And I put the logo on the front, Iowa Wild colors.
We get these in the merch store, Joey. Get a few of these made. Get you a little side action going. You could sell your lures through
Little
the
business.
Iowa Wild merchandise store.
Yep. Got bored during COVID and taught myself how to airbrush.
No
So
kidding.
it's
that's
actually
outstanding.
really fun.
So fish of 1,000 casts. Do you have any?
Yeah. Last year had a good trip up to northern Minnesota. We go up to Lake Vermilion. My dad, my uncle, and my brother. We ended up catching 2 or 3 muskies, and one was probably 30 to 40 pounds, 50.5 inches.
Oh, boy, 3 or
Just
4
a-
in one trip.
Yeah.
Although I know once you get closer to Canada, it gets a little bit easier than trying to do it in some of the more southern areas of the country. But I've never caught one. I have only been muskie fishing once, which fish of 1,000 casts going one time. If I would have caught a muskie with my muskie fishing
Aren't
friend,
they like big?
they're gigantic, Joey. If I would have caught one on my first ever muskie fishing excursion, I think my buddy would have thrown me off the boat because that's not how it's supposed to go. Put it this way, Joey. Muskie fishermen are excited when they get a follow to the boat if they see a muskie. Good gracious, that is a fish.
Whoa.
So we need you to once we get done, we're gonna need you to text me that picture and then some pictures of the muskie lure because we want our fans to see that as well. Luckily, I don't think that shows the spot that you caught it in because if that was the case, you would not send us the picture and we would not show it publicly.
Thank you.
Yes, of course. I know how the credo goes. Joey, anything we missed?
No, we covered a lot.
We
I think
did.
We got a lot of.
We did.
a lot
This
of
was
things
better
that
than I
people were-
expected it to
a
be, and
lot
I
of
had high
things-
expectations. I
Yeah,
did.
a lot of things that people were dying to know. Those were all the the burning questions. At least definitely that I had. So.
Yeah. Chad, anything we missed or anything you came prepared with that we didn't get to?
No, not that I can think of. I had a great time. I was a little nervous coming in here. Figured I'd get run through the ringer, but I enjoyed it.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. And as much flack as referees get, and I've never been mad at you per se, but there's been times around the broadcast, and I like to think that I take a pretty even-keeled approach. I know some broadcasters don't, and they like to bring referees through the ringers. And there's times where you want to, but it's conversations like these that I think, and I hope for our fans, help illuminate the fact that there's so much more that goes into every call and every situation than what fans see at home, than what Joey sees down in the VOM, than what I see up in the press box, or even what a coach sees on the bench. And I loved your line. We do this because we love the game. They're not out there because you want to be center stage. You're out there because you want to be involved in the game. And that's something that when this season, when there's a call that irks me, I'm going to remember that while the game's going on,
Well,
and it might help calm me down a little bit.
And just remember, we're human. We make mistakes
Yes.
too. Nobody ever is going to ref a perfect game. Nobody ever will. Nobody ever has. Nobody's played a perfect game. So just remember, we're human too, and have fun at the games.
Indeed. Grace is a good thing. Chad, thanks so much for this.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Huge thanks to Chad Evers. Nice to have an off-season in-studio interview, too.
Yeah,
That's rare.
rare.
We normally have
Caught
to.
me off guard.
Yeah. You should tell
Caught me off guard.
that story. That's a
Yeah.
good story.
Yeah.
Before the interview, I text Joey. Chad promptly arrives. 2:50. We did the interview at 3.
Yep.
Had it set for 3. I text Joey, hey, Chad's here.
I said, oh, I didn't realize Chad was coming in person. I thought for whatever reason, it just maybe we just gotten to habit where all of our summer interviews are over Zoom. So I just figured.
Well, I think it's a safe assumption you made.
Yeah,
It's
so
a
I just
safe
figured.
assumption.
And then Ben was like, "Oh, he's local." I know Chad. I know he's local. But yeah, I was on time. It wasn't like I was late and kept him waiting. But
Yeah, because normally these guests get on right
they're
at the
prompt.
time that we set it for, but he was here early, which I respect.
And he came prepared. He had notes. It was great.
Yeah, so we have officially set the table now that we have to send these questions out beforehand because that worked really well.
Yeah, as many as we can.
Yeah.
Sometimes
things come up naturally, but and as I said to Chad, it's not like we're ever trying. It's not gotcha journalism. We're never trying to catch anybody off guard. So
it helps
sharing
with the storytelling.
questions. Yes, it helps them be more prepared.
Yeah.
And he was, and what came of it, I thought, was a very illuminating interview.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks to Chad for a long form, but I think really intrepid chat, and for all the time he gave us, and for enjoying it too. So. Moving on to the bus line, we haven't had it 2 weeks now. Yeah, because
it's been a bit.
We didn't obviously do it, and then 2 weeks ago, I don't think we had other things to talk about.
Yeah,
maybe,
we might have run
didn't
long or one way or another, but yeah, we people have been calling in.
Yes.
So we got some voicemails we got to get to. Period 3 though, brought to you by the Wildwear Shop. Wildwear.com, the official online store of your Iowa Wild, with the largest selection of Iowa Wild fan gear, one-of-a-kind apparel, and exclusive specialty merchandise. There is always something new at wildwear.com. Don't miss out. Head to the website now. Start shopping. State Fair stuff was flying off. This is going to come out after the State Fair, but those Corn to Be Wild shirts, they ran out. And I saw people walking around with those corn hats everywhere. So, again, we do it all the time, but kudos to Kelsey and Morgan and our merchandise crew for putting out stuff that people can't keep their hands off of.
The best way to sell how great that shirt was when we did our Fairdcast, we weren't recording at the time. That gentleman came by, was looking at just the shirt.
And he stared at it for a long time.
Yep. And then you started talking to him, and I think you sort of went in hockey fan, and he's just like, what? This is a guy who didn't seem like a sports person in general, but just because of the shirt, we got talking hockey with him.
Yep.
It's the absolute defining way to represent merchandise.
Yep.
You're spreading the game through merchandise.
Yep.
It's a perfect example of it.
It was good
well
stuff.
Done.
But all right, bus line.
We gotta get Kelsey on here sometime.
Yeah.
We rave about her and Morgan and the work that they do. Although we tried to get her on that one time and she said no.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Well, yeah.
Staff spotlight. She's too busy.
Yeah. No.
Iced us.
Kelsey's always gonna say no. She'll never come on here. I don't know why. Maybe she gets camera shy, but it's also okay because Kelsey likes to just give me a hard time.
We could do we could do a fashion show. We could do a fashion show with all the merch. We could come walking out. We could come walking out in different stuff on the pod.
We should do that.
Be pretty good.
Because
be really good for the audio listeners too.
Yeah. Well, that can be like a YouTube exclusive.
YouTube exclusive.
Yeah.
Riding the bus.
I do like that. 'Cause at the beginning of the season,
show.
that's something we always do, and that's not a bad idea.
This is just marketing happening live.
Yeah, you're hearing it. You're seeing it.
Was not staged or planned. I just thought of this.
Don't look at the man behind the curtain.
Behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Bus line.
515-318-7863. Give us a call. Give us your questions. I know it hasn't been hockey season for a while, but it's coming up fast, and you guys have questions, which means we have answers. So
sometimes.
When have we not had an answer?
That's true. We've always
had an answer. They may not be the answers you want, but you're getting an answer. All right, here we go. Here's our first one. Let's let it rip.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm brought up from Louisa County, Iowa, off in the east, and I'm a big Heartlanders fan. It's about an hour north of me, so it's easy to go to games. But what are some of the best Heartlanders players, or some of your favorite Heartlanders players that have come up through the system and played with the Iowa Wild? A couple of them I remember. Chaykovich was fantastic, I think, when he first started. Davis Kosh. Reese Smolek was one from a couple of years ago, and now you've got his brother, Will. So just any Heartlanders players that you guys thought were really nice to be around or were just good on the ice. So thanks for putting up the podcast. I've been really enjoying it for the last few weeks.
Well, thank you for the kudos at the end,
yeah.
for sure.
We always love when people are listening. That helps.
Yeah.
That helps everybody. Makes the world go around.
And thanks for calling in. Yeah. Well, there some of the names he brought up were the names that were popping into mind right away. Davis Kosh, that's a sleeper pick. He was great to have up here. It was brief. I don't think he maybe played in one game for Iowa at the time. It was one of the throes of midseason with injuries. The team was staggered a bit. But I think about Pavel Novak is maybe one of the best people to be around. I've been around in pro hockey. You want to talk about a grateful, positive, upbeat person.
Mm-hmm.
That kid is the model of positivity. Obviously, his story very well documented with his battle with cancer and his victory over cancer.
Yep.
He comes to mind. Gavin Hain, I don't know if I'd count him. He played some games there, but I'd probably consider him more of an Iowa Wild
like for
person.
me. Like I think one name that stands out to me a lot, and I'm pretty sure he was the captain the first year for the Heartlanders, but Chris Bennett.
Yeah, that's a deep pick. Yes, he was.
He's someone who I thought played pretty well in the times that he was here. So he's a name that stands out to me. The Joneses, Hunter and Peyton.
Yep.
Are both guys who they're super friendly people.
And Peyton, and both of them, but Peyton specifically, a terrific guy.
Yeah.
Really
so
like Peyton Jones.
Those are two guys that kind of jump out to me. But yeah, it's a lot of the names that you said. Gavin. I don't know. He may not have played a ton of Heartlanders games, but Bryce Gervais was a guy too.
He's probably right in the line of Hain a little bit.
Yeah,
too,
he's played a little bit, but still, I mean, for the sake of it, someone who counts in that mix. So there's
Zmolik, though. If I'm gonna pick a guy, like a true guy that played a substantial amount of Iowa Heartlanders games, not a Hain, not a Gervais, that had the biggest impact on the ice for Iowa, the Wild, I would think Zmolik.
Yeah,
he played some really meaningful minutes when this team was down bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Really meaningful minutes. So he'd be. If I were to pick an on-ice performance player, he's the guy that at least to me jumps out from the rest, as he played some really important minutes for Iowa when they needed him at the time.
Yeah.
Fantastic question.
Good question.
Thank you
Great
for listening.
question. Yeah.
And we're always open to talking about the Heartlanders and excited about the affiliation agreement too.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yes, it is.
All right, and we got one more.
Okay,
we'll do one more. Two this week. All right, here we go. Number 2.
Hey, Ben and Joey, this is Tony from Dubuque. First-time listener, first-time caller. What's a man got to do to get on the bench for a game? I've seen people on the bench for warm-ups, but I'm not a warm-up kind of guy. I want to be on the bench for a game, maybe make a play call or something. Let me know. You can reach me back at this number. And let me know if I got to wear a suit, too. Thank you.
All right.
Okay.
Well, the easy answer would have been if he hadn't prefaced it with, I've seen people on the bench for warm-ups, because then I would have instantly thrown to you, which is a great time to plug the Blue Line Buddies right now.
Yeah, well, Blue Line, our bench warmers experience, that's something that we put out in, donations, season ticket holders, a perk for them sometimes, sponsors or whatnot, but an opportunity to, where I think is the best place to watch warm-ups, is sitting right on the bench and watching the guys go around and get loose and ready for the game. But that's not really
not what he's asking.
That's not what Tony was getting at.
Also,
and,
Eastern Iowa theme to our show today.
Yeah, big
Eastern
time.
Iowa show.
And it's a tough ask to get on the bench.
I don't think there's a short way to get on the bench. I think you need to start coaching.
Yeah.
I really think that's the quickest and only way to get onto an American League bench during a game or play for the team. So
medical
really,
staff, equipment. So just kind of which avenue you want to take, but it's not just
all those routes aren't just I'm going to make a phone call and be there tomorrow. You have to, especially get to the American League level, you do have to have a pretty extensive background in whatever field that is to get there.
You would need to wear a suit, Tony.
Yes,
if you're
you
on
would
there.
need a
so
suit.
that would be a thing. But it's not like an overnight kind of thing. It takes years of work and practice and dedication to it to end up in that position. So.
Maybe video coach Ray Sylvester might be a good person to ask about that, because he made a pretty substantial jump from the United States Hockey League. No disrespect to that league. I also made that jump.
Yep.
Granted, I'm not on the bench.
Neither is Ray.
Yeah, that's
For
a
what
good
it's worth,
point.
neither
Yeah,
is
that's a
Ray.
good point.
Neither is Ray.
Ray's.
That's what people don't know. We got to get Ray on here at some point just to talk
Yeah,
about
we
like
do.
his because people don't. You don't see him unless you're in the locker room. You don't see him on game day.
He's an unknown, really impactful presence to what happens down here. I feel like he did get on the bench out. I think he got a couple of games on the bench before Franzen came in. I think. Again, I could ask him this, but I feel like he did because I want to say Ben Simon played a prank on him that first game going on the bench because he was really nervous for it, understandably so.
Yeah.
But that'd be maybe the guy that I would ask about he's only 25 and he's coaching in the American League. That's unless you played in the American League.
Yeah, not many
That's
people.
hard to get to the American League at that age as a coach. And he did it. So maybe he's the guy that you should ask about that, Tony. So we can get you guys in touch maybe if Ray decides to agree to that request. But anywho, a couple of very good bus line questions.
Yeah,
so
good
thanks
stuff.
to both who rang in. Episode 41. Close the book on it.
Kind of in the books. I mean, coming soon. We're not going to spoil anything or give you guys too much information, but me and Ben went out to the fair and had a very exciting day at the fair, and we're excited to share with you how that day went. I know everybody's been long awaited. This cow chip throwing contest has been something we've talked about for a year.
Did Joey defend his title?
Yep.
Or did he not?
A lot of people want to know.
Or did someone rain on his parade?
You're gonna have to wait. You're gonna have to wait to find out. We're keeping this one close to the vest.
We're not telling. I didn't even tell my wife.
I haven't told my family. They were bugging me yesterday to ask. I know Abby had somebody on our staff ask how it did because we wouldn't tell them, and she basically said it'd be like Old Yeller if anybody told if she had said anything. So nobody knows.
Under lock and key.
It's the three of us and one other person who we ran into at the fair knows what's happening. But
if that person's listening, we appreciate your discretion.
Yeah, don't tell anybody.
Don't tell anyone.
Don't tell anybody. We want to keep it a secret, but that should be coming out probably not too long after this episode drops. So be on the lookout, and we hope you enjoy it because we had fun.
A lot of fun here. Joey, thank you. Abby Kimball, thank you for editing our YouTube side of this podcast. Also to Jeremy Core and Executive Podcast Solutions. Another Eastern Iowa shout out to both callers.
We're killing it with Eastern Iowa.
We are. It's
we
Eastern
really
Iowa Day here on Ridin the Bus. Also, of course, to Chad Evers, the AHL linesman that joined us for a great chat today and gave us so much. Thanks for all the time and for all the calls you made. Luckily, the story he told was a good story for the Iowa Wild, where the Wild ended up scoring on Grand Rapids. It wasn't one that a coach
went the other way
would say, I remember that and I hated them for it.
Yeah.
So that was terrific. And to all of you for joining us for episode 41 of Ridin the Bus, the official Iowa Wild podcast presented by Central Iowa Pool and Spa. Until our next episode, I'm Ben Gistlesen. Thanks for joining us. And Abby. Boy, that's deer in headlights.
We'll get there.
Two honks
for the win.
win.